right, thank you, Lenka. Next we have another advisory board member of Generation Atomic, Mr. Canon Bryan from Terrestrial Energy. All right, Canon, the stage is yours. Pull up your slides here.
Yeah. All right, greetings. I'm Canon Bryan. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Terrestrial Energy. We're a Canadian company. I come to you from Canada, 9 time zones away from home, but very happy to be here. Thanks for coming. So I want to talk a little bit about what it takes to be the killer app of energy. And this is the philosophy by which the founders of this company decided to embark upon this project in the first place. If you have a power system which meets these 5 criteria, low cost, low carbon, small, scalable, and high temperature, you have a unique ability in the global energy system to address many, many industrial applications. In fact, I believe the entire spectrum of energy provision, including, of course, electricity, but also industrial heat applications like steel, aluminum smelting, hydrogen production, and these types of power systems have to be right-sized. Actually, there was a study that was done with the U.S. federal government and ourselves that looked at all the industrial facilities in the United States, and we found similar to Rowley's study about the different sizes and scopes and temperatures of district heating facilities, that there's quite a variation. And so if you want to address these power needs with this type of technology, you have to have a design which is scalable. And of course, high temperature. It's worth noting that there has never been a power system ever in the history of energy, in the history of humanity, which has met all of these 5 criteria. So there's a lot of them which meet 4 of them. Like fossil fuels is awesome at 4 of them. Of course, it's not low carbon. Hydro's pretty good, but it's not high temperature, and so on and so on. So this will be a very unique technology offering for the global energy system. So Terrestrial Energy, we consider ourselves a leader in nuclear innovation, alongside our friends at NuScale, and who's have brilliantly blazed a trail in this notion of delivering nuclear innovation. Our product is the IMSR. It stands for Integral Molten Salt Reactor. I'll explain what that means in a minute. The power system, or our first commercial offering, is a 195 megawatt electrical reactor, and it uses it's a high temperature reactor. It's a high temperature system. It delivers a 600 degrees molten salt, and we are undertaking the commercialization of this technology because, well, we feel that we can deliver on those 5 criteria and that we can be the killer app of energy. We can unseat natural gas and deliver a killer app of energy which economically will be selected and by industry, and also ecologically it will be superior to fossil fuel alternatives, rendering natural gas and others to be deselected by industry in favor of something better. We have tremendous support from 2 G7 nations, the US and Canadian governments, in the form of funding and also public endorsement. And I would also point out that in the USA, our project there has been successful in winning a $1.2 billion federal loan guarantee from the US government. We're the only ones to be successful in doing that in the world of nuclear innovation. Some other conventional nuclear power plant construction projects have won some government grant funding, but not advanced design. So we're the first and only one so far. And I'm going to show you a slide later which shows a list of our industrial advisory board. We have a tremendous support from industry. We have 10 electric utility companies that are signed up and providing all sorts of technical assistance and will ultimately become our customers. So it's important to note that our business plan, where we sit on the commercialization continuum today, is that we are within line of sight of commercializing this technology. We're within 2 years of entering into commercial transactions. And this is super important because there's a lot of people that disbelieve that this kind of technology will be available in a reasonable time frame. The common refrain is, well, it's nice, but it's going to be ready in 20 or 30 years. We're here to say that that is not the case. That is not the case. 2 years. 2 years, we're going to be commercial. And there are others that are in a similar situation. NuScale is going to be also, I would say they're going to be commercial in a very reasonable time frame. I don't know exactly what it is, but certainly much, much less than 20 or 30 years. And there are others as well. So it's very important to keep that in mind. Some interesting people that believe in this, not just me. We have a very nice endorsement in the current issue of the MIT Technology Review, one of the world's leading technical journals. There is an article which is listing their 10 breakthrough technologies, and the list is curated by none other than Bill Gates. I'm sure you all know who that is. And one of the 10 breakthrough technologies, which is going to reinvent the future, according to Bill Gates, is new wave nuclear. That's what he calls it, or nuclear innovation. So a couple of names you might recognize on the list here: NuScale and, yes, Terrestrial Energy. So obviously very happy to have that public endorsement in such a high-profile publication with such a sophisticated audience. Okay, so we're going to look at the technology for a minute here. I'm the financial person, so usually when I talk about this, I talk about how much it costs, but I'll try to explain a little bit about how it works as best I can. You'll excuse me if I'm not the best at this. But this is what it looks like conceptually, so you can this is a thin-walled reactor which stands about under 8 meters in height and 3.6 meters in diameter. Our program is to be in commercial operation in the 2020s. In other words, to have a commissioned power plant, commercial power plant, in the 2020s. We are working assiduously towards that, and so far on schedule, happy to report. We have entered into the licensing, pre-licensing process in Canada. There is a well-defined pre-licensing process in Canada which allows the vendor to communicate directly with the regulator to get a formal safety assessment of the design. We started in February 2016, so we're progressed, I would say, much further than halfway through. We're scheduled to complete this process by the end of next year, and I would say most importantly, I would say we have the funding for the vast majority of this process. It's quite costly, and I would say this process probably more than anything defines our valley of death, because when we have a pretty good understanding with our prospective customer base that when we get out of this process, the regulatory risk will be bounded enough that they can make a go, no-go decision. So all we need to do is raise enough capital to get from here to there, and we can have a reasonable expectation that within 12 months of completing this process, we can have a commercial transaction, or perhaps more than one. This is an extremely interesting and exciting time in the history of the company, because we have a line of sight to commercialization. And again, this goes to what I said at the beginning of this talk, which is commercialization is not 20 or 30 years away. It's 2 years away. Everybody, please, if you remember one thing, this is the most important lesson of the day. The design uses a standard fuel, which is somewhat of a distinguishing factor for our technology, for our design, because some of the other advanced designs use a higher level of enrichment, which is a bit of a different path from a regulatory point of view. So this is what the inside of the can looks like. It's quite basic, very sort of elegant in its simplicity. This is the can itself, and then this is like a guard vessel. This is a silo, and then you have this big, heavy lid on top, which is at grade. So everything is below ground, which is a safety feature. And so you have the moderator, primary heat exchangers, the fuel, which is liquid, which is circulating inside in a convection system, and this is the secondary coolant loop. So let's zoom out a bit. Here's that can right there. It's sitting in the silo. You can see the loops coming out, and the reactor building itself is very unremarkable. It's basically a concrete box with some holes and some piping, which is good, right? We like unremarkable. Unremarkable is easy to regulate, easy to explain, and cheap to build. So we can build one of these concrete boxes wherever you need power, and then we can build these in a centralized assembly line manufacturing facility. According to a Fortune 100 company that developed a preliminary design for one of these manufacturing facilities, we could quite easily pump out 100 reactors a month. So if you're wondering about how difficult it's going to be from a technical standpoint to deploy a large number of these systems around the world, there's your answer. That's one manufacturing facility. Let's say we can build 3, one on each continent, or you can start to get to an idea of what a possible deployment strategy would look like. Let's zoom out a bit more. This is probably the most important slide for the folks in this room, I know we're talking about district heating, and so we don't talk that much about district heating. We can do it, but we're probably not the best system for it, unless you look at it in the context of providing other energy services simultaneously. So, so here you have there's the can right down there, where we originally focused on, and there's what we call the nuclear island or the nuclear building. This is a balance of plant infrastructure, so where you take the heat and convert it into electricity. Switching yard, which will send electricity into the grid and maybe used to power a city. These lines here represent pipelines, and which are shipping hot molten salt to other industrial applications. So, for example, we could ship hot molten salt to a thermal storage, and this is a really important point to understand, particularly in light of some of the comments which were made this morning. Molten salt, the type of molten salt we use, which is similar to what's used in the solar industry, has tremendous heat storage capabilities, and I was pretty surprised to learn about it myself. The heat, which is stored in the molten salt, degrades at the rate of about 1 or less than 1 degree per month, which is kind of extraordinary to me. It's almost like a permanent battery. So this can be used, for example, to moderate variable renewable energy, right? So you've got your wind and your solar over here, and they're variable. And when they are not on, you can draw from the thermal storage unit. Of course, you can also use the hot salt to power industrial processes like making hydrogen or anything like that. And the other interesting thing about the heat storage capability, which is super germane to what we're talking about today, is that it has the capability of traveling great distances. So if you're worried about having a nuclear reactor in the downtown Helsinki, you don't have to have that concern, because you can build the power plant maybe 5,000 meters away. We actually don't know how far it will go. We haven't done a study which has found or delineated the total length which this hot salt can travel and degrade to the point where it's no longer cost effective. It could be, for all we know, it could be 20,000 meters away. We don't know, but it's very far. Let's put it that way. And it's also useful for industry. Most steel manufacturers are not interested in getting into the business of nuclear power, so they're perfectly happy to just take delivery of a hot salt, totally non-nuclear, and leave the power generation up to somebody else. This is a schematic version of the last 4 slides. So, right, you've got the heat generation here, the secondary coolant loop where the molten salt is coming out, and then you have a tertiary loop to make absolutely 100 trillion% sure that it's non-nuclear, and those are the loops which are going to the industrial applications. So, right, electricity, potentially moderating renewable grid services, and then your industrial applications. And there's one on here which is of particular interest to me, I think is super exciting, and which not many people seem to know about, although this is a very educated audience, so you may have heard this before. But of course you can use heat to make hydrogen. It requires a lot of heat power and some electric power, depending on how you do it. And we're working with the US government on 2 different technologies for making hydrogen and proving the economics. So one project we're working on, it's called the hybrid sulfur method of making hydrogen, and we're working with 4 labs, 4 government-owned labs in the US and 1 major electric utility, and trying to prove that we can make hydrogen this way for under $2 a kilogram, maybe under $1.50 a kilogram, which would be a game changer for the world of hydrogen, because it would be clean and cost competitive. You can also make carbon. If you have enough power, you can use that power to separate carbon from air or water or a smokestack, and you can take that hydrogen and that carbon and smash them together and make gasoline. It takes a lot of power, but if you have a power source which is low cost, low carbon, and high temperature, you can do that, and you can make a gasoline, a transport fuel, gasoline, A1 aviation fuel, diesel, which is carbon negative, carbon neutral, net carbon zero, whatever you want to call it. So that would be indeed a tremendously interesting technology development, and I think a brilliant bridge to the electrification of the transport sector, because as I think everybody in this room sort of realizes, the day when we have 25,000 civilian aircraft which are 100% electrified and also being charged by 100% clean electricity is not soon, right? And it's urgent. and we need to solve that problem. This is a bridge solution for that problem. So this says a lot of the stuff that I've said already. Talks a little bit about our load following capability, which we have. We also have black start capability, similar to, I think Lenka did a terrific job of explaining that stuff. A lot of that applies to a molten salt system as well. It has a tremendous capability of ramping up and down very quickly. So we could supplement a grid system which is based on renewables. Check my time here. Oh my God, I've gone way over. I'm sorry. I'm really bad at that. I'll just go on fast forward now. So this is a sort of graphic representation of where we are in the continuum. And so we're really, as I said, on the cusp of having some actual commercial transactions, which is a super important proof point, to the investment community, I think, and also to many other constituencies. This is the advisory board I was telling you about. So 9 North American electric utility companies, one European one so far. Hopefully we can get some more, maybe from this room. And we have a pretty darn interesting advisory board of human beings as well. We've got the former Minister of Energy of the United States, former Chief Technology Officer of Lockheed Martin, the world's largest defense contracting company, former Chief Technology Officer of Westinghouse. So we've got a lot of really credentialed, highly credentialed people involved in this project. And that's all I have to say.
Excellent. Looking forward to the discussion there.